Welcome to FounderLine, the show where we answer your questions about startups. I'm your host, Joe Beninato. Thanks for joining us. It's great to have you all with us. Our goal with FounderLine is to provide a way for people who are interested in startups to get their questions about startups answered. So maybe you're thinking about starting a company, maybe you've already started a company and you have an issue that you're dealing with. Maybe you're an employee who's thinking about joining a startup and you want to ask some questions before you actually accept the offer. In any of those cases, we want to try and help you. This is a live show, so the only way this works is if you ask us questions. And you can do that by either sending us emails to help@founderline.com, or you can tweet to our Twitter handle, which is @FounderLine. With that, let's get started. Our guest today is Mike Cassidy, who is currently the project leader for Project Loon at Google. Mike's been the CEO and co-founder of 4 startups, including Ruba, Xfire, DirectHit, and Stylus Innovation. Mike, welcome, and thank you for joining us on FounderLine.
Thanks for having me.
So Mike and I are old friends, by the way. We didn't meet at college, but we were actually at college together and have subsequently met in the years after we moved out here. But before we dive into the questions from founders and other people, I usually just ask a few questions just to get you warmed up and ready to go.
Sure.
So you've started now and run 4 companies, and all have been successful, which is awesome. And I know people ask me all the time about, well, how do you make sure that you get a successful outcome in a startup? So maybe share some insights into how did you make sure those companies all succeeded? I know nothing's ever guaranteed, but maybe share some tips on how you help to ensure success in those cases.
Sure. Well, there's definitely no guarantees with startups. I think, I don't remember the statistics, but something like even venture-backed startups, only 1 in 10 will actually have a successful outcome. One of the things I have tried to do with all the startups is focus on speed. Sort of speed is the ultimate startup weapon, and I think that has a lot of benefits. It obviously can keep you ahead of the competitors who are trying to match you by feature, that can sort of outrun them. 2, it's really good for your team morale. Your team is sort of excited if you're moving fast. If you move slower, they kind of get restless or not as happy. 3, it's good, obviously, for valuing the company. When you're really accelerating, moving quickly, whether you're raising a round or whether you're going through an M&A transaction, the faster you're moving, typically the higher the valuations are.
And when you say moving fast, like what do you mean by that? Like hiring people really rapidly, building product features rapidly, all of the above? Like what are the elements of speed in your mind?
All of the above.
All of the above.
Definitely hiring people. We give a term sheet, we give an offer letter to a candidate the same day they come and interview with us. So they walk in, we interview them. Before they leave the building, we sort of huddle amongst ourselves and say, yeah, we like them. We've done an independent reference check sort of halfway through the interviews. And we give them an offer letter. And then I say to them, congratulations, would you like to join us? And they say, whoa, I wasn't expecting an offer right now. And I say, well, I don't want to rush you. Can you call me back at 9 o'clock tomorrow morning and tell us whether you're in or not? So speed in hiring, speed in product development. I really encourage startups to not sort of think, okay, how long will it take me to build this product? To instead think, I'm going to work on this for 3 months or 3.5 months. What can I build in that 3.5 months? Because I think the problem is if you spend a year building your product, you might have gone the wrong direction. Whereas if you launch something after 3 months, 3.5 months, you quickly get real feedback from real people, and well, that was a good idea, or that was a bad idea. Speed in everything in the business, setting up the office, business development deals. I believe you want to get deals done. I have this saying that the probability of a deal ever closing eventually goes down by 10% every day it doesn't close. So
From day one?
From day one.
Wow.
So if you really believe that, it sort of speeds up the way you negotiate and the way you move. And even raising money. I've raised, I guess, 8 rounds of funding, and 7 out of the 8 rounds got a signed term sheet the same day we presented to the investors.
Wow, that is awesome. Well, I think what's interesting is in all of these outcomes, they were acquisitions, right? And so happened in some cases after a short period of time, in other cases longer. Like, I don't know, what's the longest one you ever did? 3-4 years, something like that?
No, they're all 3 years or less. Xfire was about 2.5 years from when we started on the product. Xfire was, about 2.5 years from when we started that product till we sold. Stylus Innovation was about 2.5 years on Visual Voice till we sold. Direct Hit was less than 2 years, and Ruba was about 2 years. So
wow.
Yeah, fast.
That's great. By the way, Patrick Chung says hello. He's going to be our guest next week. And I noticed as I was getting ready for him to come on that he was one of the investors in Xfire.
Yeah,
so,
he was a board member too.
He said you're one of his favorite entrepreneurs ever.
Well, he's one of my favorite venture capitalists.
Oh, perfect. They love each other. That's great. So now you've been at Google almost 5 years by my counts. And it's very typical for someone who's entrepreneurial in spirit to go to a larger company after an acquisition and stick around for maybe a year or so and then to exit. And in this case, you haven't done that. So maybe talk about why it is that you're still there and the difference compared to how many situations go in an acquisition scenario.
Sure. Well, the biggest reason is I'm working on a project I'm really, really excited about. It's called Project Loon. Sounds a little outlandish when you hear about it, but we're trying to use high-altitude balloons 60,000 feet up, that are broadcasting internet. And today, 2 out of 3 people in the world don't have internet access. A lot of people think, oh, everyone has internet access. Not true.
2 out of 3?
2 out of 3 do not. 4 billion people on Earth today do not have internet access.
And is that primarily in like third world countries and remote areas, or India, China?
In India, there's 1.25 billion people. Only about 15% of people in India have broadband internet access. In Africa, there's 1 billion people, and only about 10% of the people in Africa have internet access.
Wow, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So tell us more about this. Like, so what is you're putting up these balloons and they go over the country, and then somehow the people on the ground can access the balloon somehow?
If you have an LTE phone, you can get access to the balloons. That's one of the things we're really excited about. We partner with telcos in every country.
Okay.
And as long as you have an LTE phone, a 4G phone, it's just like a cell tower in the sky. Our balloons are just like a cell tower, but they're 60,000 feet up. And the telco we partner with does the billing with the customer, markets the product to the customer, does customer support. The telcos are very excited because they often don't have a cost-effective way to reach sort of the rural areas or some areas of the country. And our system lets them reach them in a very cost-effective way.
That's very cool. So that's what's kept you at Google.
Yeah.
You haven't been working on that all this time, but maybe
the last 3 years I've been working on this project.
3 years.
Yeah.
Awesome. That's cool. And so what's the future hold for Project Loon? Just keep growing the footprint and expanding to more countries? And
yeah, we are partnering with we've done tests already with several major telcos, with Telefonica, with Vodafone, with Telstra in Australia. We're doing more partnerships and more tests, and hopefully soon there'll be commercial services around the world where you'll be able to use your cell phone you already have and get access from the balloon above you.
That's very cool. Well, maybe someday I'll get a chance to try it out. But
sure.
I'll have to go somewhere far away, it sounds like. Awesome. Well, why don't we take some questions and see if we can help some people out. So I'm going to start off here with a question from Marie. and it says, what are some best practices for CEOs working with a board member?
So I've always had very good relationships with my board members, and sometimes you hear these stories from people like, oh, I hate my board's being a real pain, or whatever. But I've had always very sort of productive, healthy relationship with my board members. I think part of that is you want to make sure when you're initially bringing someone on the board, it's a good fit. And I have good conversations, direct conversation with board members, and I talk about sort of things I'm most interested in. I'm most interested in, if they can sort of make introductions for places I can't reach, or if they can sort of think a little bit more strategically. I tend to be focused on, I've got these 23 things to do today, and sometimes it helps for the board member to say, okay, let's think ahead. In 1 year, what are you going to be doing? But I also prefer to sort of run the operations and marketing and the product of the company sort of internally, and not have board meetings revolve around like feature discussions, things like that.
Yeah.
And I also think a good system that I like to do with the board is have very efficient board meetings. I mean, our whole board agenda is only 1 page long. I mean, we'll have some supporting like financial charts or something, but 1 page, and focus in on, what's the progress since the last board meeting? What are the sort of open discussion topics, and really focus in. And the board meetings are typically 1 hour or maybe an hour and a half, but no longer.
Wow.
And typically the board members like that.
Well, and I remember, was Stuart Alsop one of your board members?
Yes, he was.
Okay, so I don't, which company was that?
That was X-Fire.
Okay, so I remember him talking about this magical Mike Cassidy 1-page thing, and I think again it goes back to your speed as a weapon, right? It's like speed. Board meetings can expand to it's like hard drive space. I always say expands to the space available, right? So I remember you shared that with me once, and I just thought, wow, how does he get it all in on 1 page? But it's definitely doable.
Yep.
And it's interesting now because a lot of the companies I work with, they don't even have board meetings, right? Like they've just done a seed round with 12 investors, and there's no lead investor, and they're just kind of winging it for the first 6 to 12 months, which is a little dangerous in my mind. But I think it's different than when you and I were sort of doing our early startups.
Well, people do often ask me, they're like, hey, after you sold your first company, you'd made enough money that you could have self-funded company 2, 3, 4. Why are you going back and raising, venture money? And I did for all 4 companies. I raised venture money. And I think it's because it's good to have a board to talk about things and to kind of say, well, have you thought about this? And, Mike, I'm not sure that's the way I would do it. If you don't have a board, you don't really have that sort of feedback.
So, so it's I think it's a little crazy when they're not, doing anything with their board members, but that's the way a lot of companies are structured right now. So, but I always found, putting those guys to work is really helpful. So I think you'd agree. All right, well, this is a pretty interesting one because I know Larry is one of our regular listeners. So he has a question about somewhat related to speed, which is a competitor has emerged from stealth development. They appear to be strong and several months ahead of us. How should we respond? We're considering growing the team, working harder, adding new partnerships to bridge gaps, reassessing competitive advantages, and seeking additional funding. What are the top priorities? And I know it's a little bit hard for you to say, not knowing anything about their company, but what advice would you give to Larry when a new competitor kind of shows up that's maybe doing something similar to what he's doing already?
Sure.
And he's in the medical, technology field, so trying to do something related to software and medicine, and I don't know if it's insurance related or what it is exactly.
Right. So I think one of the key things you need to figure out is how fast they are moving. Like, they may be ahead of you, but if you're gaining fast on them, then I really wouldn't worry about that, because maybe you'll catch them in 6 months or 8 months, but then they'll never catch you. If you're moving faster than them, they'll never catch up with you once you pass them. But if they're moving at the same speed you are, or faster, then I think that's a big problem. And I don't think any of the proposed solutions, like raising additional money or hiring additional people, are necessarily going to help. I'm sort of a fanatical believer in the quality of your team over quantity, and
The people.
the people.
Okay.
Pretty much all the startups I had, the core technology was built with a team of maybe 3 technical people. And like with Direct Hit, the search engine, that core team of 3 built an architecture that went on to be able to serve hundreds of millions of searches a day. And so it's not like you needed a team of 20 or 30 developers. You needed the right 3 developers. And there's also huge advantages to having a small team in terms of communication and sort of morale and camaraderie and things like that. So I guess my advice would be, if you're really in a space where you're behind and the competitor is gaining, putting more distance between you, then I think it's time to change direction. And I think changing direction is okay. Out of my 4 startups, we had to change direction 3 times, 3 different companies. The first one, the original product was called Dial-A-Fish. We were going to change the way everyone orders Dial-A-Fish. We won the MIT 10K business plan competition. Changed the way everyone orders groceries. And we only had $1,500 in capital. I put in $500 each. My 2 partners put in $500. Well, it didn't take too long to figure out that that's not the right amount of capital to change the way everyone in the United States orders groceries. But in the process of building that product, we were buying computer telephony application development toolkits to build it was a sort of a pen-based system that you'd scan barcodes, it would communicate touch tones over the telephone into a database. Well, we realized that the tools out there at the time for building interactive voice response applications were pretty weak. And we said, okay, forget the grocery stuff. We're going to build an application development tool to build computer telephony applications. And we did, and within 6 months, we were the industry leader of the segment. Now, it wasn't a very big market segment, maybe a $20 million market segment, but we became the leader, and it turned out to be a very successful company. The third company, Xfire, started as Ultimate Arena was the name. It was going to be a place where people go online and play video games, and you ante up. Okay, I'm putting in $1 or something. Maybe 5 people are playing. The winner gets $4, and Ultimate Arena keeps $1. Seems great. It was not considered gambling. It's a game of skill. It failed. There was the same problem you have with pool hall sharks. Really great gamers would come to the site and take everyone's money, despite all of our trying to make people play with equally ranked people. But we learned in the process that that people really told us, yeah, I really love the site because it's easy to play online with my friends. At the time, there were other ways to play online with your friends, but it generally involved, typing in an IP address and a port number into a command console and to get yourself playing on the same game server they were playing on. With our idea, it was just an instant messenger. You click on your friend's name and you play. So anyway, I encourage people to get in the space, whatever space you want to get in, and learn, and then find the direction. So to the question, I would say, if the competitor really is ahead and moving at a pace you don't think you can lap them, then I'd start looking around for alternative directions.
Maybe related, maybe unrelated, right?
Yeah, it depends on how you view the 2 stories I just described. I mean, are those related or unrelated? I mean, they're kind of related.
Yeah, they both seem related.
Yeah.
So, all right. Well, Larry, I hope that's helpful. And what I would add to that is just sometimes competitors show up, and you just have to keep moving, and maybe even go faster than you were going before. And I remember, at least in one company, where we had all these calendar competitors. Yeah. It was kind of a scramble to get to the finish line as quickly as possible. So look for alternatives. Go as fast as you can. I think speed as a weapon. I think you've done a few interviews about that online, right? And posted some slides or something. Yeah. So you can Google that as well for some info about the speed, and just we're obviously not as close to your situation as you are, so we're just speculating here, but hope that's helpful.
Sorry, one more point.
Sure.
Along the lines you're saying, Joe, people often say, oh, all this space is too crowded, it's too late for me. And I agree with you that you shouldn't run away just because there's a competitor in the space. Just like you, when we entered the search engine space, there was Yahoo, AltaVista, InfoSeek, Lycos, I can't remember the last one.
Not your current your current employer.
No,
they didn't even
Google
exist,
wasn't
right?
launched yet.
Yeah.
So there's 5. Actually, we entered the MIT 50K contest at that time, and there were some very respectable judges who said, oh, it's too late for search, too late for search. But we thought, no, we think we have a twist, a better quality product. And we and Google launched the same year. And so I think there is oftentimes space, if you're a better quality product, to jump in when there's other competitors.
Yeah, everyone thought, especially Google at the time, oh, this is crazy. Like, AltaVista rules the world, right? And most people watching this right now probably have never used AltaVista, right?
True.
So, all right. Well, let's move on. We have a question here from Phil. Do you think it's fair for founders to pay themselves a market salary, or do you think they should live on half salary or something similar? So this is a pretty popular trend right now where people raise a seed round and then don't pay themselves very much money. In some cases, it's minimum wage. In other cases, it's half of what they think they should be making. Like, there's all sorts of variations on this. So what do you think? What's your perspective on that?
I'm a fan of founders making below market salaries and employees making below market salaries. When my first company, I paid myself initially $1,000 a month, and then got up to $50,000 a year, and that was a big raise. The second company, $75,000 a year. Whenever I'm hiring somebody, I want them to be taking at least a slight pay cut. I don't want someone joining the team and kind of having this sort of feeling or attitude, whatever. Yeah, I worked there for a couple years. Didn't really work out, but I made the same as I was going to make it some other place, so what's the big deal? I want someone hungry who's like, I hope this works out because I'm making, 15% less than I was working before, but I got equity, and I want the equity, to pay out. So yeah, I'm a fan of getting some skin in the game.
But don't you find it's harder in some cases to, especially competing against larger companies like Google or Yahoo, or who are paying lots of money to engineers to get them to come in, like say a strong lead engineer, to have them come in below market rate salary right now?
I don't know. I mean, I think if you're going to try to go head to head on salary with some of these big players out there, that's going to be hard for a startup.
Yeah.
I think there's many people out there who are excited about what comes with a startup. What comes being the equity's got to be paying out. And I think you should set it up so that if the company is successful, you make people multimillionaires. And I will actually use that as a screen, and I have throughout my career. If someone isn't willing to take that 10% cut or something, maybe that's a good screen for getting more of the people who are hungry and driven inside the company.
Yep. And now maybe you could do the reverse with hiring at Google, right? I mean, you're probably not asking them to take a pay cut to join Project Loon. Is that fair?
But the thing about Loon is, you always hear this, people say, oh, I want to make the world a better place, whatever. But most of the people on Loon really feel that way. I mean, I do. It's like, and so we're getting people who say, I want to join because I'm going to bring internet to these 4 billion people who don't have it. And they're not so much saying, I've got 3 offers and this salary is this, that, and the other thing. They're saying, wow, what a cool project. So yeah, I mean, with a project like that, you can appeal to people, much different way than sort of the starting salary.
Well, and similar to a startup, right? It's mission based as opposed to like cash compensation based. And I'm always a little skeptical of the cash, people. Like if that's all that matters to you, I almost don't even want to continue at that point.
Right.
Like if in the first 15 minutes of the conversation they bring up like cash compensation, like
Yeah.
we're pretty much done at that point,
Yeah.
right? So I don't know if you feel similarly, but
Definitely.
yeah.
Yeah, that's a huge red flag if someone in the interview is starting to ask about that. That's really bad.
Or benefits, like, or how do bonuses work here? And it's like bonuses.
Yeah. We got to get the product
yeah.
working.
How about we launch something
Yeah.
first, and then we'll worry about bonuses.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Phil, I hope that's helpful to you. We'll do one more here before we do the sponsor thank yous. So this one is from Antonio. What mistakes do you see startup CEOs making over and over? So it's an interesting question. So maybe we should apply that to you. I'm sure over the course of your career you progressed and stopped making certain mistakes and maybe made different mistakes. But maybe you've seen this with other friends and colleagues who are CEOs as well. But what have you seen in your travels?
So I think one mistake is it's always a balance between being tenacious to be successful and being nimble and shifting direction when you should. And I've seen a lot of people, I think, make that mistake in both ways. They're not tenacious enough. Initially, it's kind of like, oh, we had this idea and it got covered in TechCrunch, so why don't we not have 5 million users now? It's like, dude, I mean, you need to build a community, you need to build a distribution channel, you need to build, a lot of stuff. But I also seen the mistake where, the product's out there, it's been out there for 6 months, 9 months, 12 months, and they're looking at the same charts. We're up to 862 active users last week, and you're like, are you serious? You're still like debating whether this is successful or not? I think when the product is good, and people say, I'm not sure if this is a good product or not. Do we need to just wait longer? In my experience, when the product is great, you know it. Like the search engine direct hit, it took us a while to build it, a couple of months to build it, and we had to ingest all these click records of what the query was and then what someone clicked on and how much time they spent on a website. If someone spent a very short amount on a website, we penalized it. They spent 5 minutes at a website, we rewarded it. But once we collected all this data, the very first time we sat down and said, okay, let's try some queries. Let's try, Napa Valley red wine on some other search engine versus direct hit. And out of the first 35 queries we did, 34 of them were dramatically better on direct hit. And there was no question, we're like, we got a winner. We knew. Same thing with Xfire. It was this instant messenger for PC video gamers. There's only like 7 people in the company or something at the time. We said, okay, everyone go home tonight and just try out this alpha version on your operating system at home, just to make sure, I don't know, Windows 95, does it work on whatever it was? And people were like, okay, I'll check it out. And strange enough, someone was checking it out, and they saw one of the other employees through this, just the way it's supposed to work. Oh, my VP of engineering is playing a game online right now. Oh, the product is working. I wonder if I just clicked on their name, and whoa, it worked. Whoa, that's cool. And they didn't plan to be playing a game that night, and they had a blast. And while they're playing, the head of QA also was testing it, and he said, oh, Chris and Mike are playing, jumped in, and we knew instantly. We're like, this is exactly what's supposed to happen. It makes it easy to play online with your friends. You didn't have to schedule a time to session. We knew. I mean, we would have bet $1 million each at that point. So I think if you're still like 9 months into it, kind of scratching your head, looking at the data, is this a good product or not? It's not.
Sounds good. Well, so that's one example.
Okay.
Maybe another example of startup CEOs.
Well, it's kind of the counterpoint to speed.
Okay.
I see this all the time. Startup CEOs who, sometimes I mentor them and I'll chat with them 1 month and then maybe I won't see them for another month. And then I come back and I'm like, okay, what's new? And they're like, well, we've sort of worked on the business plan and we sort of did a spec for the product, and we interviewed 3 people, and we're building a pipeline. And I'm like, what? Are you insane? In 1 month, you should have hired at least 3 people. You should have an alpha of the prototype working, and don't worry about the business plan. Worry about general market sizing and general thoughts on distribution strategy. And if they're not moving at that right tempo, you're like, you're never going to get there. I can tell you what it's going to be like the month after this, and the month after that, and the month after that.
Got it. I totally agree. Those are great. So Antonio, I hope that helps. I think those are great points. And if you're a CEO, you should do what you can to keep going as quickly as you can, and not sitting there counting the pages of your business plan or other documents like that. So we're going to take a little break now. I get to thank our sponsors, so you can relax
Sure.
and have a beverage. This show really wouldn't be possible without the support we get from our amazing sponsors, Oric, Square One Bank, Accretive Solutions, and Ustream. And I'll start off with Oric. I need to thank Mitch Zuckley and the team over there. I've been working with Mitch for many, many years. And I always tell people that when you're building a startup, of course, it's important to get a lawyer to handle your legal paperwork and your employment contracts and all that sort of stuff. But more importantly, you want to get a great advisor who has seen many, many more transactions than you've seen, hired many, many more people, et cetera. And your lawyer is the most likely candidate to be familiar with those areas. So you want to get a great lawyer. I know the team over there, and they've done a great job for me during the years, and I'm sure they do a good job for you as well. So if you want to find out more information, you can go to oric.com. Next, I'd like to thank our sponsor, Square One Bank. They're new to us this season of FounderLine, and I've been working with Lori Lumenti-Garty and Sam Baumick there for a number of years. If you want to get in touch with them, Lori is the right person to go to. You want to have a great financial partner for your startup, and obviously you want to make sure that your money is safe, but you also want to make sure that you get to take advantage of some of their services. So things like online banking, setting up a company credit card so that when the time comes and you have to sell your company, or maybe the company doesn't make it, you don't have a bunch of personal credit card debt because you forgot to tie it up with the company. So the team over there is great to work with. They can help you through a bunch of different financial related issues. You can find out more at their website. It is squareonebank.com. It's square with the number 1, bank.com. We have another new sponsor this season, which is Accretive Solutions, and they are the leading business outsourcing firm in Silicon Valley. And I had asked them, well, what exactly is business outsourcing? But basically, it's your CFO and your finance team who take care of the books and the AP and the AR and all that sort of stuff. And I've worked with Martini Ni-Gano there for many years. She was my interim CFO at Tello, and she's now helping me with FounderLine as well. And they take care of everything for you. So payroll, making sure the bills get paid, accounts receivable, whatever, getting ready for taxes, whatever you need. And so it's really important when you're doing a startup, when you have board members who you need to provide financials to, that you have somebody who can pull that stuff together for you. And Accretive is a very cost-effective way to have that finance function taken care of until your company grows large enough that you need to hire a controller or a CFO to take care of that stuff. So you can find out more about them at their website as well. It's as-bos.com. That's as-bos.com. And then finally, I want to thank the team over at Ustream. Ustream has been with us from the beginning. We're broadcasting live using Ustream technology. And I want to thank Brad and the whole team over there, Warren, who we work with quite a bit. They have supported us from day one. Their streaming technology is awesome. You can do company meetings over their technology. If you want to do a show yourself, you could, get a video camera and start broadcasting, and next thing you know, you have a show live on the internet. So anything you need in the streaming realm, Ustream can help you out. Again, you can find out more on their website, which is ustream.tv. So that's paying the bills, as they say in the business. And we're going to dive back into more questions from founders here. So let me see what we've had come in here. We've got another one from Sharon. What are some of your secrets for finding and hiring great employees? So hiring a big deal for most companies, especially nowadays. It's really hard because there's so many startups, and I like to tell people, there are 1,000 two-person startups, and there need to be fewer 5-person startups. So what did you do to find great people over the years? Did you always start the company with a group of friends, or did you work with people you worked with in the past, or where'd you find some of the key hires over the years?
Yeah, so definitely worked with people I'd worked with before. In the first company, Stylus Innovation, I think 11 out of the first 15 people were people I had worked with at a previous company. Can't emphasize enough how great that is. Takes all the uncertainty out of it, right? When you hire someone new, you just don't know. Are they going to be great or are they going to be crummy? If you worked for a year with them, you know how they are. I also look for real talent in other fields. For instance, Ultimate Frisbee. One of my best hires ever was this guy. I'd never worked with him, but on the Ultimate Frisbee field, he was amazing. He would just lay his body out flat, stretching for the Frisbee, scraping his body along the grass. And I'm like, I bet he's pretty intense at work too. And I hired him and he was awesome.
They say that people who do well in sports frequently do well in startups. They're I know people who recruit for collegiate athletes who, maybe they didn't make the pros because they weren't good enough or whatever. So I think that matches up.
I believe it.
Yeah, just because of the competitive sort of spirit.
Yeah. I think sort of following along the hire people also if you can get one really good person you can hire who has a really good Rolodex or connection database, it's worth it. If you can get someone who was sort of a mid-level engineer or manager type engineer or something at one of the top companies around the valley, well, they're probably going to know the next 10 hires in your company. And so it's worth it reaching a little bit further for that first person, giving them more equity, giving them more significant role in the company, bringing them into board meetings, whatever it takes, because they can bring an amazing wealth of high quality talent. Yeah.
What about recruiters? Did you use recruiters at all, or what were your results like if you did?
Haven't relied heavily on recruiters. I think there's also places you can go. There are some very good recruiters, but just haven't spent as much time with recruiters. You can also find, for whatever space you're in, there's often forums or places they gather. For gaming, you can find, basically forums of hardcore gamers, and some of them are developers. And it's great if they're passionate about the product. And so we found some of our best hires for Xfire that way.
Really?
Yeah,
Online?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And were they remote? They were living in another city, or?
No, in the valley there's so many people around. You can find them, or you can. Sometimes they'll move for an opportunity. I mean, people loved Xfire, so yeah.
All right. Well, Sharon, I hope that helps. Hiring is. I know it's a challenge for all startups right now, especially. What's different about when you and I were last doing companies is most of these companies are not raising a ton of money, right? Yeah. They're raising $500K, and it's gone up a little bit in recent times to maybe $1 million, $1.5 million in the seed rounds. But how many people can you hire for $500K? There's not a lot of team that you can build with that. At least not at close to market rate salaries.
A lot of it is it's a tightrope, I think. We actually didn't raise much money at my startups either. At Stylus Innovation, we didn't raise any venture money. That was the one, $1,500 from the three founders, and then we won $10,000 from the MIT prize, and then no venture money. Talk about focusing your mind on how much resources you have. But then even direct hit, we raised $1.4 million in our first round, and we'd only spent $400,000 by the time we had AOL as a customer and Apple as a customer. But it's kind of, I think it really focuses the team. Like if you have limited resources, it doesn't let you sort of get distracted and try 5 different products, whatever. It's like, okay, we have 9 months worth of runway. We better make this one work, and it really focuses your mind. So
Yeah.
I like that, actually.
Yeah, no, and the flip side is the companies like Color.com who raised $41 million in the first round, and that just creates so many issues, I think. I mean, it is a luxury. You don't have to be as nervous as you might be otherwise, but I think being on that edge is like so critical. Like that is what forces you to make greatness, right? It's sort of the knowing every day that you're going to die soon if you don't figure this out, right? That pressure is pretty critical.
Necessity is the mother of invention. Yeah.
There you go. All right. Well, Sharon, I hope that helps. Let's move on to another question from Walter. He says, when your companies were acquired, did you go out to find the acquirers, or did they come find you? Any advice for how a startup can make itself most desirable to acquirers? So you're one of these rare people in the Valley who've been through multiple exits. So maybe talk about how you found those acquirers, or they found you, and what you did in order to make yourself attractive to those companies when the time came.
Yeah. So fundamentally, I think you cannot sell your company. It's always an acquirer buying you. Almost a tautology. If you knock on someone's door saying, hey, you interested? They're going to be like, what's wrong with you, right?
Yeah,
I mean, there must be something wrong.
Somebody has a saying which is similar to that, which is companies are not sold, they are bought, right? Which I think is...
Totally agree.
Yeah.
The first case, we had nothing to do with. We never heard of it. Artisoft came and found us. The second one, Ask Jeeves found us because they were looking at these stats, ComScore stats of who had the most traffic, and we had tons of traffic because we were powering search for Microsoft and Lycos and a whole bunch of other sites, and so the way ComScore was tracking it, the way we were powering them showed up on Ask Jeeves looks. Xfire, MTV came. Now there are some things you can do. Like we had done a strategic partnership with MTV before that, and it was a really tiny thing. It wasn't really strategic for them, and it wasn't really strategic for us. But we got introduced to them, and they liked us. It was sort of, we liked the people we met there, and I have this monthly email I sent out for all my startups, like 5 bullet points, super short, super concise. Here's what's happened the last month, and as I'm building the company, I'll just add any interesting person that might, play a role later on. They might be investors, they might be strategic partners like MTV, whatever. And turns out that this SVP at MTV was on my list, and they had just lost the MySpace acquisition to News Corp, and they were sitting around going, "Oh, we want a sort of a vibrant, growing community that appeals to young people." And gamers is very sort of young skewing. And that morning, my monthly email, hit this guy's desk, and he opens it and he's like, we should call, Xfire. So I think you can establish relationships with them just so they know you, just so you can start marketing to them. And I think that really helps a lot.
Well, and I don't know if, do you know Jason Calacanis at all?
Yeah.
So Jason has been talking a lot recently about updates from founders.
Okay.
And like if you don't hear from a company that you're an investor in, like on a regular basis, something bad is happening, right? So you use this tool, which I've used myself as well, where you're sending out to interested people, right?
Yeah.
Just sort of like what's going on with the company. Were you asking for help in those messages, or
Nope.
just purely status updates?
Purely status updates.
And
But every time we'd get something good. Like every time I'd send out an email, monthly email, something good would happen.
Yep.
Like in the X-Fire space, we were selling to our customers were advertisers, big ones, Pepsi, Unilever, Chrysler. And some of the stats we'd cite in our little monthly update were, oh, we just did a special Midnight Madness thing for Mountain Dew. We reached 22 million gamers through the associated PR around the event. It let people play online with the number one Counter-Strike team in the world, and it was sponsored by Mountain Dew. We reached 22 million gamers. That was in the little bullet point in the thing. Sure enough, I also had 20 other people we were trying to get deals from. One of them would call the next day and say, tell me more about this,
yeah, how do we get one of those?
Yeah.
We want one of those 22 million reach things.
Right. So you're not asking for money, but you're touting your successes and even just the traffic numbers. Like, at Direct Hit, we were always like, okay, we just did, 20 million searches a day yesterday or something like that. So I put that in the list, and they'd be like, 20 million in a day or whatever. They're like, cool, tell me more.
Very sneaky.
Yeah.
No, that's great. And I do think those sorts of updates, like sometimes you're sitting there composing them at 11 o'clock at night or midnight, and you're like, why am I doing this right now? And then you send it out, and like good things come from it, right? So I just did one for FounderLine actually, and I was thinking about that, and sure enough, like the next day, one of the sponsors writes back to me with an opportunity, and you don't know where these things come from. So
here's another story you'll like.
Okay. I love stories.
I know you do. So this was the first company, Stylus, and the way the computer telephony industry, you had a hardware partner. So we made the software, but there was a hardware partner. It was just a board, like a modem you stick in a computer, that does the touch tone conversions, converts touch tones into signals. No big deal. But there's basically one giant hardware vendor that had like 70% market share, Dialogic. And so anyway, the CEO of Dialogic was on my monthly update list. And every month I'd send cool things going on with our product. So the VP of marketing for Dialogic calls me up one day, and he's like, I hate you. I'm like, why do you hate me? He's like, because my boss just called me into his office and said, why aren't we doing marketing like this? And I'm like, what marketing? He's like, your stupid email that came out. It hit the CEO's desk, and the CEO's like, it only takes me 30 seconds to read. It's concise. It's exciting. They're making great progress. What are we doing? Are we doing this stuff like this? So I think there's evidence it's really powerful.
Cool. Well, getting marketing people pissed off at you is always a good thing in my mind.
He was a friend. He was just joking.
Okay, that's awesome. All right. Well, Walter, I hope that helps, and maybe that gives you a little advice on how to make yourself desirable. So let's move on. We have a question here from Ramesh. This one says, startups have lots of ups and downs. That is true. How did you maintain work-life balance and remain calm during the difficult times? So I'm not sure you did maintain work-life balance, but maybe you could start there and then talk about the ups and the downs and how you maintain balance in those cases.
Yeah. So absolutely, it's a roller coaster. All four of them. I mean, 3 out of 4 of them, we almost, cratered. One time I had to call a meeting and say, sorry, folks, we have only 4 weeks of money left, and we're probably going to be bankrupt in 4 weeks. Really sorry. I mean, another one was 3 days away from being shut down. So there's definitely roller coasters. So a couple things. One, for me, I would work out every day at lunch. And that was a great stress reliever for me. And even if problems are really bad in the morning, I said, okay, maybe it will feel better after lunch. And sure enough, with the endorphins or whatever from the run would make it feel better. Also, I'm a very, up and down emotional kind of guy. So it hits me hard. It's like, we're going to conquer the world. And then 6 hours we're screwed. We're dead. So for me, it always helped to have a more balanced partner, co-founder, whatever, someone more level-headed. They wouldn't get as excited as I would when things are good, but they also wouldn't get as down when things are bad. And
so they help to attenuate you a little bit,
definitely,
keep you more in the middle.
Definitely. So I would definitely recommend people set something like that. And also, I think experience is pretty powerful teacher if you can remind yourself. And I often would find myself consciously reminding myself, like, something bad would happen, and I would say to myself, okay, how many times before have you thought, we're never going to get out of this box? And we did get out. So just say, all right, I don't know how we're going to get out, but 47 times previously we've been in a pretty bad spot, about as bad as this, and we made it out. So statistically, we'll probably find a way out. And that, for me anyway, that's what I would do.
Did you share this information with your team? Like, were you the sort of leader who was very open with, almost everybody or everybody, and talk about, like, oh shit, this thing just happened, and maybe this is gonna be a problem, but let me tell you how we're gonna think about it? Or were you more private and like?
No, totally transparent. I can't stand the CEOs who kind of like sugarcoat, downplay, don't share, because nobody has any confidence or faith in those CEOs. Everyone's like, oh, that's all BS, that you have no idea whether the CEO is telling you is true. So I think if you tell people, yeah, this is a pretty bad spot we're in, I don't really know how we're going to get out of it, I'm just being honest with you. Because then that same company, it was Xfire actually, there was a point when it was pretty grim, and I was honest with people. I said, we don't have a good product right now, and we don't have any ideas, and this is bad. And people were like, okay, this is kind of grim. But they all hung in there, and it turned it around. But then there was another time, I think it was maybe a year later, when people started to get nervous again because we were running out of money again. We only had, I think, maybe 5 weeks or 4 weeks left. And I was always transparent with our finances. They're like, dude, we only have 4 weeks money left. But I said, don't worry. I said, our metrics are so good. This is a virally growing product. And if you have a virally growing product, you can say, look at the chart. Every week it's been growing, 6.7% or whatever. It's like, it's done that 10 weeks in a row. It's going to do that for another 100 weeks. And VCs get it. So I'm like, do not worry. We'll raise money. And they said, okay. And I said, look, I'll tell you one thing. I told you when things are bad, so I'm not BSing you right now. And they're like, yeah. And they were fine.
Pay no attention to the man behind the curtain.
Nah.
That's good. No, I think transparency is critical. If you don't do that, people don't trust you. And I've worked for people where that wasn't the case, and especially engineers. I love engineers because they can always sniff the bullshit out before everybody else, right? The marketing and salespeople, sometimes they can be lured into whatever. The engineer's like, that's never going to work. And I always found the best relationships were when you stayed close to the engineering team, and somebody would like give you the behind the scenes, like they didn't buy that, that's not true. All right, so Ramesh, I hope that helps. Oh, so did you maintain work-life balance, or was your life crazy? I mean, you have a family, and life is busy, so.
I did try to maintain work-life balance. I would try to come home like 6:30 every day. Now, these days, sometimes you go back online, 10 o'clock at night or something for an hour or an hour and a half. But and I would try not to go to the office very often on weekends. So, I mean, yeah, I was thinking about work all the time, and it was very intense when I was at work. But no, I did try. I think it's very important. And there's lots of studies that show, bad impacts if you don't, have dinner with your families and things like that.
Yep. All right. Well, Ramesh, I hope that helps. I think we got time for a couple more here. So this one's from Chuck. When you are managing a team and you know you can do something better than someone who works for you, how do you avoid micromanaging? So I don't know if that ever happens to you. I know it definitely happens to me, and I can see in this question maybe this person has the same issue. But so what do you do in those cases?
Well, I think one thing to remember is just do the math, and you're like, okay, I can do this, 25% more efficient than that person can. But, if they do it, then I can do these other things. And if I did their work, then if I just sort of figure out the math for everything, you quickly realize, okay, it's actually better. The theory of comparative advantage or whatever, it's still better for them to do it, even though they're not as efficient. The other thing is, I think, just focus on, for me, morale is such an important component into productivity. Like, I think happy team members are like 5 or 10 times more productive than kind of blah team members. And so again, it's kind of just very cynical or whatever, math-based or whatever. It's like, okay, yeah, I could do that faster, and I could do it better, but I know it would crush their morale, and I know their productivity would then go down by like 80% or something. So it's not a good move to do that.
What if you know it's something critical and you're like, let's say it's I don't know, you're preparing something for a sponsor or a advertiser or something, and you know it's like not quite there. So what do you do in those cases?
No, if it is critical, I am pretty detail focused. I try to have a very open relationship with people, and I'll say, I know it's going to drive you crazy, but I want to work more closely with you on this, and I got a lot of little like grammatical things I want to make, but I think this is really important, and sorry, kind of all over this one, but sorry. And usually people are like, all right. So
you think they know that maybe they didn't give it 100% in those cases?
I don't know.
Because that's what I always wonder is like, do they know? Do they just think you're a pain in the ass, or do they know that they kind of mailed it in and they didn't really try? And I think it could vary by situation, but like grammatical errors, I used to proofread press releases and go, all right, did you even put this in the Word and like try the spell checker or like really so and that can not go over very well in some cases. So I don't know.
So I actually don't feel embarrassed like when I corrected grammatical errors. I'm kind of like, if it's a compound sentence, a comma goes before the end. It's not a debate. It's not like optional or whatever. It's like, hello. Or if someone mixes up it's and it's IT apostrophe S, I'm like, hello. So I don't feel like shy about that one. I'm like, come on, we got to do better. So I don't mind those.
All right. Well, Chuck, hopefully that helps. And I think we got time for one more. We've got a couple minutes left. This one's from Harrison. We're a seed-funded company and getting ready to raise our Series A. Any suggestions on how to best approach this process? So you talked earlier about raising lots of money for different companies, and it's a little crazy right now with all these like seed-funded companies with $500K to $1 million, and then going out to raise a Series A. So what did you find worked best for you in those situations, or any advice for Harrison?
I don't think you should sort of let it be a 2-month fundraising process or 3-month fundraising process. I think you should be very focused on saying, okay, we're gonna do this in a week or 2 weeks or something, and be very direct with the investors. Say, we don't want to spend this 2-month process, even to the point of taking a lower valuation to get it done quicker. And I will tell that to people. I'll say, there's 3 great investors who are very interested in our company, and all of them would be great partners to have. There's a term sheet phase going on. One strategy would be to hold out for the highest valuation. That is not my strategy. The first reasonable term sheet that comes in, I'm going to go with it.
You would tell the investors that?
I do tell them that. I've done that many times before. And I've had investors where I've told them, I'm going to make a decision at 5 o'clock today with the best offer I have on the table, and I'm going to go with that. And then I had an investor call me back the next morning, a very reputable, top-tier Silicon Valley investor. And they said, hey, Mike, we're in. I said, what do you mean? I said, no, we talked it over. We want to be in, and here's this great valuation. I'm like, it's done. They're like, what are you talking about? I said, I told you yesterday I'm going to make up my mind at 5 o'clock. And they said, yeah, but everyone says that. It's just all BS. I'm like, no, when I say it, I'm doing it. I'm going to make up my mind at 5 o'clock.
And you did.
And I did. And so if you stick to that, people are like, okay, if this person says they're going to take the best offer they have, let's give them an offer. And I think the speed advantage, and many times you can look back at many of my valuations where people would say that you could have gotten much better valuation on a first round or second round or whatever. Maybe so. But it was done in a day. And other companies I've seen, they'll spend 3 weeks, 4 weeks, 5 weeks, 7 weeks, 8 weeks, and they're like, oh, I got, 27% higher valuation, and meanwhile wasting 7 weeks. Or I've also seen many companies who had an offer it was reasonable, maybe not super high, and they got nothing at the end. They got nothing 3 months later, and I think that's just a disaster.
Yeah. I'm curious, that top tier VC, did they try and convince you that you should like stab the other guy in the back and go with their higher offer?
I don't even entertain those conversations.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I love it. Well, unfortunately, we're out of time. So thanks for being such a great guest and sharing your thoughts today.
It was fun. Thanks for having me on the show.
Absolutely. And if you want, you can follow Mike on Twitter. His Twitter handle is Michael P. Cassidy. So don't get the other Mike Cassidy, the reporter from San Jose. But check him out on Twitter and follow him if you'd like. Tune in next week for another episode of FounderLine. Our guest will be Patrick Chung, who's a founding partner of X Fund and one of Mike's previous investors. So Patrick's a great guy and was previously at NEA, where he led the consumer and seed stage investment practices, and he's been an investor in companies like 23andMe, Looped, and even Xfire. It'll be a great show. It's next Wednesday at 5 o'clock Pacific time. Thank you once again to our fantastic sponsors, Ustream, Oric, Square One Bank, and Accretive Solutions. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter. Our handle is @FounderLine. You can email questions in advance for Patrick to help@founderline.com or tweet them to us. We're happy to get those in advance. You can also go to our website. I'm sure you can guess the URL, and you can subscribe to email updates from us. You can watch previous episodes, and you can also download our podcast on iTunes. Thanks for watching. Here's to the crazy ones, and we'll see you again next week.